Now, let me tell you what the powers that be have in store for you. This is a formidable thing. It's very hard to combat. They use conflict, and they have more conflict. They caused this economic crisis, but we are not going down as a nation economically. They have more tools than you can imagine to still keep this thing afloat. They got a lot of inflation they can still do. The world doesn't have any choice to replace it. The dollar outnumbers any other currency by 10 to 1 in the world. There's no way to replace the dollar. They can't get rid of it by turning it. There's not enough euros to turn it into. There's not enough pounds. You can't even take a basket of currency. It doesn't even come up to 30% of the number of international dollars that are out there. So forget about a collapse precipitously of the dollar. It's going to continue to go downhill slowly. What they really got in store for you is another world war. And you have to understand this, because this is the secret to the dilemma of what we do in the Conservative Party. If there is a chance for restoration, Chuck and I had a chance to talk about this for a couple of hours yesterday, which was great. We don't usually get a lot of time together because we're so far apart. But we have both come to the conclusion that the wall of the majority is against us. And while that does not mean, and I want to repeat this, it does not mean we change anything in our effort to attempt to get ballot access, because this is our greatest missionary tool to be able to convert people and let them know that we're out there. And it's essential that we also prepare. You know, the dialectic uses crisis to do what? To turn people into a new world order, and that's what they're going to do. You can't imagine the horrors of the terrorist event they are planning for you. The mother of all terrorism will be a nuclear preemptive strike against American military forces by Russia and China. Now, I don't have time in this speech to go through all of the detail that I presented in my World Affairs Brief and on my website, worldaffairsbrief.com. But if you want to see the entire theory of what I think the globalists are going to do, you go to worldaffairsbrief.com and click on Strategic Threats. It's right up in the right-hand corner. And it will give you about a 30-page document outlining how the globalists have been covering for Russia, facilitating communism. Not because they're communists. We used to think in the movement that it was all because there was a bunch of communists in government. But every time, if you look closely, you tried to get rid of them in the State Department, there were non-communists above them that were protecting them. These were the globalists. In fact, I'm convinced that Alger Hiss, who the establishment protected for so many years, even though he did go join the Communist Party, was like Henry Kissinger infiltrating the Communist Party. He was a globalist doing so. So the communists thought that he was one of theirs. The communists thought that Alger Hiss was one of theirs in the Roosevelt administration, but he wasn't. He was actually a globalist facilitating their entry. They used the communists to break down the existing social order of the world, to foment revolution, so they can come in as globalists and give them a slightly better alternative to save the world. They use this dialectic even with communism, etc. That's why the major purpose of going out and continued intervention in the world is to create hatred against the United States. They're actually building an excuse, handing it on a silver platter for Russia and China to take down the bully of the world someday. And that's why Barack Obama will continue, even though he's campaigned against it, continue the war of intervention. And that's why we must be very careful not to jump on the bandwagon of patriotism when it appears that we've been attacked. Our own government will have facilitated this attack. They know the Russians are cheating. They know the Russians are building weapons as we speak in underground bunker cities like Yamato Mountain in the Urals, as big as the Washington, D.C. metro area underground. Our leaders are building bunkers deep, deep underground, not because of some small terrorist event, but because they know this big one's coming. They're preparing, but not a word to the American people. There are bunkers in Colorado. There are bunkers built in the deserts of Utah. And they're making U.S. cities even more vulnerable. Why did they take all of the NORAD defense things out of Cheyenne Mountain, a huge bunker, and put them at Peterson Air Force Base in the middle of Colorado Springs? To invite destruction upon those cities. I hope to God anyone listening to my message is not living in Colorado Springs or San Diego or Seattle or any of those cities that are integrally involved with the American military nuclear complex. They are going to be targets and not survive. That's why it is important for you to prepare in advance. If you are diverted, or not diverted, but if you only see the single mission of the Constitutional Party of winning the majority through electoral means, and you do not prepare to take advantage of the crisis that will come, and if you're not prepared to govern at a window of opportunity that may well be provided by God, He can use, you see, evil, even though those judgments are warranted against the United States, He always, as Chuck says, prepares a way out for the remnant. And our opportunity to govern may come, in fact, most likely will come, as the remnant is coalesced and inspired to move to safer places during that great conflagration, when the government loses supreme power. When, in fact, if it is a nuclear thing, as the Russians are planning, and I can tell you with all my intelligence knowledge that it is true, they're planning on striking. They are not allies. The fall of the Soviet Union was a carefully crafted deception. But I can tell you the government will lose control, and there will be no way to even communicate because of the electromagnetic pulse attacks that precede a nuclear attack by about 20 to 30 minutes. So when all the electricity goes out someday and there's nothing available, you will know you have about 20 to 30 minutes before nuclear weapons start to fall. Hopefully, you will have prepared well in advance to make sure you're not in any major military metropolis when that happens. But when our leaders come out of their bunkers, somehow the world will go forward that we have no military anymore, it's been destroyed, Russia deceived us, we didn't know, just like 9/11, we didn't know. We swear it. Nobody gets fired over this. We want to lead again, and I'll tell you, that's our chance. And that's why we must be schooled in the nature of conspiracy, that we can in fact prove to people and have these proofs at hand to show this, they conspired to allow this to happen. And we must not be cowed by the fact that the media will denigrate us as conspiracy theorists. And even someday, that's why these FEMA camps are being prepared to say those that believe in conspiracy are betraying our faithful troops who are fighting now against Russia. And they need to be locked up just like the Japanese prisoners were, because they are undermining our government from within. You mark my words, you will hear those words someday in the United States of America. But it will take time for communications to knit back together. It will take at least 6 months to a year to get the electricity grid back up. And I'm saying there's no economy, there's chaos, there's no food. That's why you need food supplies. You need to make some preparations. We need to survive the crisis that comes so that we can live for another day. But even more important, ladies and gentlemen, we need to be prepared as a Constitution to go beyond only praising the Constitution and founding. Because I'll tell you, if you slap the Constitution down on the table, let's suppose in the Western states there's relatively stability, etc., and we got a chance to reestablish liberty. There's going to be a lot of other good, mild-mannered Republican lawyers and judges, and they're going to survive too. And you slap down the Constitution, we want to reestablish liberty here according to the Constitution. They say, that's fine, we know how to do that. Take the Constitution, say, we have all the case law still in our records, we know how to interpret the Constitution. And you say, no, wait, we want to interpret it according to the Founding Fathers. Well, look, you know, we've gone through this. You see, they will retain all of that. Not because they're conspirators, because they were trained in the system. And there's thousands of case law. Now you say the Constitution doesn't need interpretation. Of course it needs interpretation. I mean, it's a general document. It doesn't cover family law. It doesn't cover bankruptcy. It doesn't cover, it doesn't restrict any states' rights. And you know, states' rights, Tim Baldwin was absolutely correct yesterday. The Constitution is a compact with the states, and the states are independent, sovereign states. And it doesn't restrict in any way the states about violating your fundamental rights. How many of you want to still live in California under states' rights with what they're capable of doing to you? I'm telling you that we need to do a further amount of homework, and that is that our job is not complete by simply honoring the Constitution. We need to take the principles of the Constitution, which are there, we need to get it into tight legal language so that when we are ready to govern someday, that you have a document, here's the interpretations, here's the definitions of what true fundamental rights are. Because if you don't, they'll use the court cases decision. And there's a tremendous momentum there. You need to make sure that you have the ways in which you can take it to good attorneys, of which we have, and say, this is how we want to govern.